Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of 21 Minutes with DJ Fergg, airing on Inspire You on Air. My first guest, which I'm so excited to introduce and so excited to do this interview, is a psychologist, Miss Martha Brown. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and speaking with you all today.
Of course. So this interview, guys, I wanted it to be super informative, and Martha is a school psychologist dealing with the age, I think pre-K to 12th grade, is that right?
Yes.
So I really want to start the year off. Y'all know I'm big on mental health. I'm a mom myself, and I feel like there are a lot of things that we don't really know about, and a lot of myths and a lot of stuff that we just need to really dig into and get into it. So first, I'll let you introduce yourself to the people, if you would.
So, hi everyone. As she said, I am Martha Brown and I'm currently a school psychologist. Some of you may recognize me. I was born and raised Mobile, Alabama, graduated from the Blount High School, the best high school. And I'm currently working in my field. This is my third year and I love it. Love what I do. I love the population of students that I work with. And I just love interacting with the different communities and just teaching them about mental health and the importance of how we have to take care of ourselves first.
So let's dive straight into your location because I think that's so cool and so exciting.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm currently in St. Thomas, which is in the United States Virgin Islands. It's currently out of the States, but still in the United States. And I'm currently on one of the three islands. And it's been a wonderful experience thus far. I've only been here roughly about 4 months. I came in August, and my transition was a little bit rocky. It had its ups and downs, but overall it was pleasurable after settling in and getting acclimated. So I came from the DMV area, and the cost of living was a little bit similar to what I was experiencing living in Maryland. And so the only thing that was really a big shock for me was, of course, the culture here, because although we consider ourselves Black, the people here are considered themselves Caribbeans or Islanders. So you still have to assimilate yourself into a new culture. But also, there are no taxes here on anything expensive wise. And so a lot of the cost of merchandise or the cost of food and gas is really expensive. So you really have to plan accordingly and budget more as compared to when I was living in the States. So there are some things I'm still getting used to and some things that kind of just were already kind of expected when I moved here. So it's been a wonderful experience overall.
That's sweet. Do you wake up every day just feeling like you're on vacation?
You know, I literally live in front of Waterfront, which is on Main Street, like the downtown area. So I just literally go out to my balcony, and anytime I'm feeling down, I kind of just take a breath of fresh air and be like, "Oh, wow, look where I am!" And it's such
Yeah.
a eye-opening like experience, and the air is just really fresh, and the water is just really pure and natural, and it's just really natural and very natural and based, and it's just soft and nurturing more so than anything.
I love it. That sounds so refreshing to just walk out of the balcony like, huh, look where I am. That's
Yes.
great.
Oh,
I love
yeah.
it. So let's dive into your occupation. You are a school psychologist and you deal with academic behavior and social and emotional support. So just give us a breakdown of what those roles are.
Yeah, so academics, I say behavior and social emotional support all kind of go hand in hand, because early on you start teaching your kids colors, you start teaching them the pre-academics like shapes, how to identify letters, how to identify numbers, and then you also notice that sometimes the way they interact at home is a little bit different when you enroll them maybe in a Head Start program or a daycare facility. You start to notice that sometimes children perform differently or they interact differently. So when I'm in the schools, typically what I do is provide academic support, behavior support, social emotional support. And typically what I'm looking for academically is those students who are not performing on grade level, who may be struggling, may have some possible deficits, and they just may need a little bit additional support. Behaviorally, most times I traditionally see children with attentional problems, maybe a little hyperactivity, a little impulsivity. They're not able to self-regulate. So just being able to instill like routines and put into place interventions to kind of help them better become acclimated to their environment, because most times what we're seeing now coming out of the pandemic, a lot of kids are like not socially adjusted. They're having difficulty sitting for long periods of time. And myself personally, I have trouble sitting for long periods of time. I don't have ADHD, but I still feel as though it comes from a side effect of being in a pandemic and working from home and things like that. You become restless. So just being able to notice that sometimes students may need like movement breaks, or children may need movement breaks because they're so used to having that free range after coming out of the pandemic, or even smaller kids who may have not had a structured environment or things like that. And then socially and emotionally, also going back to the pandemic, and just when kids are small, they may be really heavy into social media, so they're not really engaging socially with their family members, or at school they're not used to socializing with peers, because they're used to being in the home and it's a little bit new to them. So they're trying to learn how to navigate that environment. So just giving them some counseling skills and some support, in those areas, just to better help them be more independent and social in the schools and just academically inclined.
Okay, okay. That was a great description. Um, so from pre-K to high school, what is usually like one of the biggest transitions for a child?
From pre-K to high school, typically just there are different developmental stages. So typically early on, students, or not students, but children that are infants going into toddlers, they're trying to learn how to navigate their environment and explore. So they're learning how to trust and how to mistrust also if their environmental needs are not met. And so going into toddler here, they're exploring their environment more. They want to be more independent. So they're learning how to do those things. And that starts in the home, right? What you model in the home, how you train your children up, positive behavior. You're teaching them to be independent, to be a good leader, to have that effective communication and things like that. But you're also helping them learn from their mistakes. And so typically, all of these things help shape their personality, because their personality is formed early on when they're like one. And so you're trying to help shape them into the person that they want to be, into later adulthood, because as we know, a lot of our childhood kind of impacts how we are in our adulthood. So most times you have to really be careful on what you're modeling in the home, just making sure it's positive, and just making sure that students are comfortable, or children are comfortable with their identity and who they are, so they're not out here conforming to different social groups just to be accepted. You're making sure they feel loved and they're secure at home, because all of those things help shape who they are when they're adults.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So when you're working with students, what is a typical work day for you? Like, what does your work day consist of?
Yeah, so after transition out here, the district, of course, is a little bit different from what I'm used to. I'm used to being in a more structured environment. However, I don't have like an assigned school out here. I'm actually floating around like 10 schools, but I don't go to all 10 schools. Now, there are
Hmm.
some people that I work with who do go to some of the school, all 10 schools, but myself personally, I'm assigned a certain caseload each month. And so based on my caseload and the schools that I'm assigned to, I float around to those schools. So I may be stationed on another island where I have to catch a ferry and go to the school and kind of do consultation with my clients, or engage in the assessment process to begin evaluations. Or I may be on island where I'm currently in St. Thomas, and I'm just going around to the different schools, just working within the systems, whether it's directly or indirectly with the students, whether it's directly with staff members, and just either being a resource for them, like giving them tools through coaching, or either helping them weed out children who may have possible deficits, and we're trying to get them the supports that they may need. So typically, my work day is not consistent. I can be doing a plethora of things, and it's not a strict routine as I'm used to when I was living in the States. So my days here are a little bit more flexible and free, and I'm doing more leg work because I'm trying to implement a lot of different programs that the schools lack here, because everything's a little bit, I'll say, a little bit behind here. Not that they don't have the same resources that we have, but we all know that education is not priority in some states or in some areas, so they don't get the funding that they need all the time. So we're just working through those kinks in the road and trying to help them navigate, life here for higher education.
I love it. So as for people who are parents, for people who are parents and they have kids that are in maybe daycare all the way up until high school. What are some ways that we can emotionally and academically support them from home before we send them to the schools?
Yeah, so a lot of times you may hear most parents in today's age, they kind of rely on a lot of educational curriculum. So through YouTube engagement, videos, music, things like that. But I think the most important thing is just teaching them those day-to-day living skills that they may not be able to be taught in schools. So being able to cook with them in the kitchen, being able to take them outside to garden, things like that. So teaching them those day-to-day living skills, but also those pre-academic skills that they are taught in Head Start or in preschool. And so you're teaching them how to count, you're teaching them how to identify shapes, you're teaching them sight words. All these things are foundational skills that they need before going into Head Start, because it always just helps to put them at a level where they're already a step ahead and they're already on grade level or they're performing above grade level. So that's what you want. You want them to go into schools with some skills so that they're academically inclined to where they need to be and they can transition with the curriculum as they're supposed to.
When a child goes into school, say they have a parent of little to no knowledge who really can't teach them much, does a child like that, are they usually adaptable? Do they learn fast, or does it just vary per child?
So all children have their own learning style, and I think most importantly, all children can be taught. It's just a matter of how you teach them. So figuring out what their areas of strength are is what we usually try to identify. So whether it's music, they're musically inclined, whether they're language inclined, whether they're more interpersonal or intrapersonal, you're always trying to figure out what that student is skilled at. Maybe they're more talkative, so they like to communicate, and so you always try to identify what area of strength the student has, and then we kind of build upon that area of strength, because all students can be taught and all students can learn. It's just a matter of the environment and creating the opportunity and space for them.
What is the most common way that a child learns?
So there are multiple ways of learning. So that's the most interesting part about it. You don't always teach all students one way because learning is universal. So as I said, like you may be a kinesthetic learner where you're more hands-on, you're more involved with movements. So you may be a dancer or a composer, a choreographer, whatever that is. You hone in on those skills. Maybe you'd like to do math. In the future, you can be a scientist or a math teacher. Whatever it is, you always try to figure out what that student is skilled in, and then we try to make sure that we're allowing that student the opportunity to grow in that area so that they are not just inclined to just one way of teaching. They have more skills on their belt, and it's always nice to be multifaceted is what I say in today's world, because having multiple skills just puts you at a higher advantage in today's society.
Definitely, I agree. So my next question is kind of goes back on what you kind of hit it on with YouTube and things like that. Do you feel like parents should limit their children's internet and social media usage?
um I think everyone needs limits on things, right? Because it helps to create structure and boundaries. I think that time is a factor, so the amount of time that you spend, the frequency, the duration, all can play an effect on your cognitive abilities and your neurological abilities, but also it's very informative, right? Like I go to TikTok all the time. Like I'm trying to find a recipe, I'm trying
Hmm.
to learn how to do something. I'm going to TikTok because it's like the best search engine. And
Hmm.
so I even saw like a lot of educators now rely on TikTok to teach their students. So kids are learning through these search engines. So you don't want to take it away from them, but you also want to create a platform where they can navigate it and it's most appropriate for them. So you may have to put content restrictions, you may have to put age restrictions on things, and you may have to limit the amount of time that they're on these apps. But I don't think, I think it's a toss up. I think there are pros and there are cons when you look at both sides of the table.
Interesting. Love it. Cause kids love, like my son is too. He loves YouTube, but he only watches like Blippi, Coco Melon, and the things that teach colors, or like Spider Man or something. And sometimes
Yeah,
just We can't watch Spider-Man today. We have to do something different. He's like, I want to get in bed and watch Spider-Man. I'm like, no, you have to go like play with your toys, do something physical, and then maybe later you can watch Spider-Man. But we can't do Spider-Man all day.
What I found is like this one educational channel is, I think it's Gracie's Corner on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think even if you like search Spider-Man educational videos, that can be a way that you reinforce learning, but also he's able to get that interaction with his favorite
Mm.
character. And it's like a double dose of both. You're not taking
Mm.
away, but you're also giving him something.
That I never thought about that actually. That's a great idea because he loves Gracie's Corner too. By the way, like she is awesome. A lot of kids love Gracie.
I love Gracie's Corner, so I know the kids love it. Yeah, she's so informative. But we also want to make sure we're watching like when they're young too. You want to make sure that it's a lot of language involved because you don't want them to be delayed in like how they communicate and things like that. So it's always nice to make sure we're monitoring what our children are watching as parents. I'm not a parent, but
Yeah. So recently, on social media, I want to say it was TikTok. A lady and her daughter. I didn't even watch it because I can't stomach it. But someone told me about it, and it was basically like, her daughter did something bad at school, so she decided to go live on TikTok and cut her daughter's hair off. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, she would never forgive her. She would never forget this. She's gonna be embarrassed for the rest of her life." I just want you to kind of talk about what embarrassing a child does to their mental.
yeah, so I actually did watch some of the video. I didn't watch all of it. I just watched like a
Hmm.
snippet of it. And it
Hmm.
really was hard to watch because she was really caught off guard. She didn't understand what was happening. And in her head, all she knew was she was being punished. And personally, I never agree with corporal punishment or disciplinary punishment. I always feel like it's a more effective way through positive reinforcement or something that's less physical. So the first thing I instantly thought was, oh wow, she has to go to school like this. Her identity, her self-esteem is all going to be impacted by these things. So she's not going to feel as pretty. She's not going to feel as confident in herself. And so all of these things are going to eventually weigh in on her. And so all I could think about is what the mom had just modeled to this child. And so in my head, I was thinking like, how can we negate this? How can we recount this with something more positive? And so she's going to need a lot of love and a lot of support and a lot of people to pour into her to make her know that she's still beautiful. And what she did may have been a poor choice or a bad decision, but there are better ways to learn from like our mistakes, right? And so growing up, that just creates a cycle because in her head, she may think that's how she's supposed to discipline children or her child. And in our head, we're like, no, that's not how you're supposed to operate. And so that mom just created a whole cycle of trauma or post traumatic stress disorder. And now this child is suffering from triggers when she's around someone getting a haircut or when she sees scissors or things like that. All of these things can be traumatic for a child, especially something so corporal, such as cutting a child's hair on live video for the whole entire world to see.
Wow, I never thought about that though. The fact that the PTSD portion of like what the effect that can have on her later, that's really
Yeah.
deep. I never really realized that. But now when you think about a traumatic experience as a child, you might see it again, even at this age. And I'm like, kind of
Hmm.
triggered. So, wow.
Yeah. Because sometimes we suppress things and then it can be a verbal cue, it can be a scent, it can be a smell, a picture. Something can trigger us and we're back in that moment again and we feel all of those same feelings of overwhelmness, embarrassment all over again. So we just always have to make sure we're modeling positive and appropriate behavior for our children.
Okay. So I'm glad you said that because it rolls right into the next question. So,
Mhm.
what are some effective disciplinary actions that parents can take for small children or teens?
Yeah, so I always like to say I don't believe in negative punishment or positive punishment. I always say positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. And so the difference between the two is that positive reinforcement, you're trying to increase in desirable behavior, right? So you want a child to behave well in school. So you're rewarding him every time he gets a smiley face when he comes home. Now, he may get a sad face one day out the week, but you don't reward that behavior, but you still give him some type of encouragement to let him know, like, oh, you can bring that smile. You can bring that red face into a green face or a happy face. All we have to do is learn from our mistakes or whatever it is. It's all about how you communicate to a child because they are very verbal and knowledgeable at young ages, and they're like sponges, so they're always soaking in what their environment is teaching them. So you always want to make sure you're modeling the right thing for your children. Um, yeah.
Is there such thing as being too positive as a parent?
No, well, sometimes they say overparenting can lead to negative effects, but I believe that's just being over nurturing. Um, and so positive reinforcement is always good, but also negative reinforcement is good. So, for example, you may have a child who doesn't like to clean up their room, but they enjoy playing with the toys in the room. So, in order for them to earn maybe some free time to play with their toys longer before going to bed, you say, hey, if you keep your room clean, you can get 15 minutes of free time before going to bed to play with your toys. So, in order for them to keep their room clean, you're giving them something desirable to work towards in hopes that the negative behavior, which is them not cleaning their room, will mitigate. Whereas positive, when you're being positive with your children and you want to reinforce that desirable behavior, like I said, you're rewarding them and you're giving them something to work towards. So it's like commensurable almost.
Okay, that was a great breakdown. I like that example. What are, when it comes to parenting and children, what are some of the signs of a child struggling emotionally that a parent can notice in home?
Yeah, so especially with the holidays around, we really have to be very cognizant because sometimes smaller children are affected if they have are suffering from the loss of a loved one. So you want even without the holidays coming around, you want to notice things like withdrawal. So if a child is not as social as they usually are with their peers, or they're not talking to family members, and they're not going out to social events as often, you have to notice those things. Like if it decreases or if it just increases, they're acting erratic, they're acting out more. These are all things you want to look for. Um, some other things that people don't normally look for is like eating disorders or eating habits. Has their intake increased in eating, or have they decreased their amount of food that they're eating? So you want to notice all those things, even sleeping. Sometimes um, student children who are emotionally withdrawn may lose sleep or maybe oversleep, and then those are signs of depression. So you want to make sure you're noticing all of the small things, even the changes in behavior, tone, communication. All those things are very important to keep an eye on, especially when you're dealing with like teenagers, because um, a lot of days kids contemplate things that we never even think of, like suicide. So we just really have to be aware of what's going on in the child's mind if we're communicating effectively with them and if we're being open with them.
I know for a lot of teens, I know me as a teen, I feel like some things they go through, they don't trust their parents enough to tell them, or they don't feel comfortable, or they don't know that they can tell them, or they don't feel like the parents have time for them. So, what are some bonding activities that people can do with their kids to kind of build that trust and build that foundation to where they know, let me go talk to my mom or let me go talk to my dad?
Yeah, so that just goes back to the environment that you create within the home early on. Is it safe? Is it nurturing? Are you meeting the child's psychological needs, which is like their basic food, water, safety, like shelter needs? And just making sure you're establishing an open and trusting relationship, letting them know that it's okay to make mistakes. And when they do make mistakes, okay, let's discuss this mistake that you just made. So putting rules into place, having expectations, but also being responsive to those expectations. So giving them love, nurturing them when they need it. All of those things help to create like a positive environment and also establish like safe and nurturing homes where they don't feel like they have to go out and maybe search for love that's considered what we call today toxic, or maybe they're looking for relationships that are not sustainable. All of these things start within the home and how we create boundaries and we set rules and positive love and nurture into effect into our homes for our children.
So I guess this would be kind of towards an adult, more so a child. But is there a way, like if the bond is broken and you're an adult, you never had the trust with your parents, is it ever too late to build a bond or create trust between a parent and a child?
Um, I think it depends on the person. I don't ever think it's too late because I'm an optimistic individual. So I always feel as though if you're willing, both parties are willing, then it can be done. So you have to be aware of what it is that you expect, and that person has to be aware of their role and what to expect from you. And you both have to be willing to give something to receive. So I always feel as though, depending on the nature of the relationship and how it was broken, even if you have to go to counseling, I feel as though it can be restored, but it just depends on whether both parties are willing to forgive one another and to move forward. But you have to be accountable for your part and your actions in what you did and the choices that you made.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. Next question, or I guess it's more so a statement. I do believe that our parents' mental health, the way that they raised us and their mental state as they're raising up their children, can have an effect on a child's upbringing. So, as parents, what is something that we can do to for ourselves to ensure that we're not dropping our stress and our mental health load off on our children?
Yeah, so I think most importantly, we have to be aware, like, of our mood changes. Especially like I said, with the holidays coming around, there's this thing that we get called the holiday blues, which is like seasonal depression. It comes when you're suffering from the loss of a loved one, or if you're feeling like you can't meet the needs of your children at the time, you can afford something. All of these things bring on seasonal depression, right? And so we have to be aware that we're not transferring those emotions onto our children. So we have to create time and space for ourselves to reflect and to create an environment for us to kind of de-stress. And that could look like you going to self-care, getting a massage, maybe engaging in some pampering, getting your nails done, whatever it is, getting a haircut, whatever it is that helps you de-stress, taking a walk, whatever it is that helps you de-stress. Always be make sure you have something that's cost friendly, because you don't want to have high burnout, right? And you don't notice that you're being burnt out or you're overwhelmed, and then you start being angry or snapping on your children, or you feel yourself not giving them the same amount of attention or reassurance that you gave them in the beginning. All of these things come about when we, experience depression or even seasonal depression around the holidays. So it's just a matter of being aware and just knowing that it's okay to seek help from someone or to talk to someone to let them know that you're experiencing maybe some hardships, or you're having some things happen to yourself that you can explain, and then that person maybe can help you work through those differences or guide you in the right direction to someone who can better assist you. So just always be aware of like your changes in your mood and your behavior.
I love it. Which just comes to my next question. As far as being able to identify and being able to say, okay, I may need help. Is therapy a necessity for us adults? And, even if you don't have kids, just for yourself. And why are people so afraid to take that step?
Yeah, so I mean, as Black people, we know you grew up. Your mom
Mhm.
is like, "Don't go out and tell my business to no one."
Yeah.
What happens in this house stays in this house. That's
Yes.
cultural norms. Like we know that
Hmm.
that's ground rule, and
Yeah.
so we're taught, early on not to go out, not to share personal business. And so it kind of creates this stigma, or this label against mental health and like seeking counseling. Whereas you see other people, of people of color maybe or different races seeking therapy, and they have no ill feelings towards it. So it's a matter of seeing how beneficial and changing that outlook as Black people, and how we see therapy, because sometimes it's better to open up to someone we don't know or we're
Hmm.
not, someone unfamiliar, because we don't feel as pressured and we don't feel the biasy or the judgmental that comes from family members who have like all this background knowledge of us. So
Hmm.
sometimes we feel more susceptible and more open to communicating to somebody that we're not familiar with. And that creates a positive relationship so that you can confide and you can help, work through your problems. Because all therapy is just guiding you through problem solving your own problems and helping you come up with solutions. It's not them giving you solutions, it's kind of helping you determine what solution is best for you and then applying that into your life and going through different routes to trying to see what works for you. Trial and error is what I say. And
Mhm.
even if one therapist is not fitting for you, try another one. I
Mhm.
highly recommend Black therapists because
Mhm.
I'm trying to expand the field and the stigma around coming into mental health and wanting to be a therapist, because it is a dominated field by white people and it is something that's not culturally normed in the Black community. So just spreading more awareness and pushing more people to be more comfortable with seeking therapy if they need it, because therapy is okay.
It is okay. It's a wonderful thing.
hmm I even went through therapy once just to be able to. I wanted to experience it so that I'm not just recommending therapy to someone without having experienced it myself. And I was going through a personal loss within my home. And so it was really comfortable being able to talk to someone, to kind of know that I wasn't being judged and to know that I was being heard, and they kind of listened to me and helped me work through my problems without just pushing solutions onto me that they wanted me to try. It was more so seeing what I was comfortable with and then helping me navigate through those to see what worked for me. And it was really eye opening. So I definitely recommend it.
Mm. The next thing I want to chat about is parenting through depression. Um, is that even possible? Like, how do we keep ourselves together without having a negative effect on our kids? Because I only have one child, but I did experience postpartum depression. So sometimes I wonder if I had a second child, how would that been on them? How would they look at me differently? How would I been treating them differently? And is there a such thing as preparing for that, or how do we deal with that?
Yeah, so I always say we can't help our children if we can't help ourselves, right? So, in order to help ourselves to be able to help our children, we have to make sure our mental health is intact. And like I said, breaking the stigma around mental health and wanting to seek therapy and counseling is important, because most times our family members are the ones that judge us the most, right? And so when we go and get outside support, we're not experiencing that same kind of perspective or that same pressure to do certain things a certain way. And so making sure that when we are depressed, we're noticing the signs. So if you feel yourself becoming isolated, be around someone you love, be around your friends, go see a movie, do something to uplift your spirit, but don't allow it. You can acknowledge your feelings, but don't allow it to stay there. You allow your mood to waver, but don't let it to stay put in that position. And even if you're not able to bring yourself out of it by doing something positive, which usually helps, something self-stimulating, go and seek help. Like, we have to break the stigma around therapy and seeking outside support, because it's there for a reason, and we're just not knowledgeable of all of the benefits that it can bring to us and our family, so that we're not creating these cycles of trauma and we're not passing down these same oppressed feelings that our ancestors passed on to us. We want to be able to do things differently, and we want to be able to break those emotional traumas and those cycles so that we can make better decisions and create better foundations for our families and our children.
Definitely, definitely. So
Mhm.
totally agree. I know one thing that I've noticed, I think that Alabama started recently. Certain doctors that you go to after you have a child, they give you a counselor for a few months, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I would say if you're a mom and you have the opportunity, you have like you literally could text them and say, "Hey, I'm feeling this way for such a short amount of time." So I thought that was really neat. And then the doctor's office, it was predominantly black, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, so that was like a new thing. I was like, oh, I didn't really realize what it was for, but now that 2 years later, I'm like, oh, okay, I see why they have that. I didn't
Yeah.
understand it at first, but it was a great thing. So times, people are kind of coming around to it, so it's
Yeah.
definitely happening. So if you have that opportunity after you have a child, please definitely do
Everyone,
it.
and it's all about asking the right questions when you're in facilities. If you don't know the right people to ask, I feel like no question is a dumb question, right? So if
Hmm.
you don't ask it, you're not going to know. And to go back to what you were saying about the postpartum and the facilities, that's becoming a thing now, like
Hmm.
postpartum facilities to help parents navigate after that. 6-week period and they may be feeling
Mhm.
like alone, because you never know until you're put into that situation. So I
Mhm.
say I'm not a parent, so I can't comment on what it feels like to go through postpartum depression, but I can feel, because I'm an empath, so I feel people's emotions and I can assimilate myself into their shoes, and I can only imagine what it would feel like. So that's why I'm always like advocating, like seek help, seek help, seek help, ask, because it's so much opportunity, there's so many resources out here just waiting for you to take advantage of them, but we don't know about them. So we have to rely on our friends in the community. We have to ask people in schools, what they suggest or what they think is best. It's all about, being comfortable with opening yourself up and being bold and communicating what it is that you need, because you never know who's there waiting to help you. So,
Yes, definitely. And I don't think people realize how bold it is to be able to say, okay, I need help. Like, let me
yes.
seek help, let me go get help. Like, that's a huge step because
Mhm.
I feel like that's part of the trauma that our parents have is not being able to say they needed help or identifying when they needed it or trying to get it. And instead, you just lash out on everything around you. So, I don't
Mhm.
know. Some people look at getting help as a weakness, but it's really a strength to be able to say, okay, I need help. Let me go figure out how to get this, and this together. So, yes, I'm all for the mental health. Please go get help if you need it. Below when we finish this video and we upload it, we will have there's a link that I found. It has like black therapists and
Okay.
like all kinds of stuff like that. So I'll link that below. And if you have any resources you want to share, we can link those below too. Because we
Yeah,
are really, it's about to be a new year. Okay. Like we have
of
to
course.
get on it and not wait until the end and wait to this and wait to that. Like the time is now, today. If you know you need help today, start today. At least look for somebody today.
And you creating this platform, I think, is amazing, especially coming from a state, Alabama, predominantly white, still has some cultural history behind it that we're working through. And so the stigma around even just Black people in Alabama, and just seeking counsel and just moving outside of the state is really big to, acknowledge. And, we have to create spaces for them to know that there are opportunities, there are resources out here. There's just one Black therapist I follow on Twitter. Her name is Nicole Lewis. She provides services in a lot of southern states. She's provided free services of charge. Just creating opportunities for our Black and brown children, our Black and brown community is very, very important. And taking steps like this, like advocating for our loved ones and just creating opportunities like you're doing for them, just to be able to spread awareness, is just a big step, in the game. So thank you for this, and just hopefully we're able to reach someone. And of course, I'm open to sharing any resources that I have.
Yes, we will. I feel like we definitely will. I feel like, especially with this being on Inspire You, which is a global internet radio station. So people can hear it everywhere, and it's just, I don't know, I feel like everywhere, somewhere, there's that one Black person who needs help. They kind of want to get help, but they're not really sure. They might be uncomfortable, or they might not have people around them who are familiar. So that's really why I'm just like, okay, I have to have her here because we have to talk about this and we have to let people know. And I know as a young parent myself, I know that there are other
Mhm.
parents as well who don't really understand the mental of children and everything. Everybody thinks because a child is a child that they don't get it, but they understand more than we really
They
understand,
do.
than we know that they do. So
They do.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Du-du-du-du-du. Oh, this is my favorite thing. So the next topic I want to tap into really quick is soft parenting. Is soft parenting a real thing, and is it a bad thing?
Soft parenting, that's new to me. I'm not familiar with soft parenting, and I had to really think about that for a moment. I'm like, soft parenting, but it kind of takes me back to like parenting styles. So like
Mm-hmm.
typically what you want to be in your traditional parenting style is authoritative parent. So you have high
Mm-hmm.
demands, high responsiveness. So you're giving them expectations, but you're also meeting their needs by responding to them. Authoritarian parenting is like you're giving them high demands, but you're not nurturing them. You're not giving them love. You're not letting them know it's okay to cry as a boy, that it's okay to not want to express yourself sometimes, but later want to come back and communicate. But all of those things are like authoritarian. And then you have an uninvolved parent who's like none of those things. They don't care what you're doing. Like, you're just out there navigating life on your own. You learn how to be a kid. You learn how to be an adult. And then you have permissive parents, which is, I think, is soft parenting in a way, because it's like whatever you want to do goes. And so the child just gets to do whatever they want. They get
Mm-hmm.
all this love, all this responsiveness, but there are no rules, no
Mm-hmm.
expectations. So the kid is just doing whatever they want to do. And traditionally, it has its pros and cons, because later in adulthood, that kid may not be able to create boundaries for himself and his relationships. He may be very erratic. He may be very accident prone. He may be in a lot of situations that he doesn't choose good decision making. All these things affect children who, experience soft parenting. So I just always think there's a way that you can do parenting. It's just a matter of not over parenting, if that makes sense. I'm not a
Yeah.
parent. I'm going to keep saying that. I hope to be, I aspire to be a parent, but I can really relate right now to parenting. But
Mm-hmm.
in my head, when I think of soft parenting, I think of a permissive parenting style where you just kind of let your child do whatever they want. But of course, that comes with consequences. And if they're not familiar with consequences, then that's a whole nother story.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. That's where the trouble begins. I see most people say self parenting is like when your child does something and you don't yell, you just talk to them really soft and say, hey,
hmm
you know what you did? That wasn't right. You were very wrong. Don't do that again,
yeah.
okay? And then that's it. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
you gave a great example because I'm like, is that a real thing? Because
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I'm soft, but sometimes I'm like, hey, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Like you can't do that.
I don't think it's a bad thing to talk in a calm tone. Me personally, I don't think raising your voice at kids is ever the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone tells me I'm too nice in the schools, but kids
Mm-hmm.
listen to me. I don't have to raise my voice. It's all about
Mm-hmm.
how you communicate with them. If you give them that nurturing, calm voice, they're going to respond to you. Now, sometimes you have kids who come from environments that are like, very loud, they're very unstructured, so they may not know how to tone it down. So you have to teach them sometimes skills like that, and that's okay. But I don't think talking in a calm voice is bad, but I also think you have to have rules and expectations into place if you want to soft parent it, like you say.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's the answer, guys, for self parenting. Because I know y'all wanted to know too. Because I see it on social media all the time. I'm like, what is self parenting? Like,
Mhm. Yeah, it's not a bad thing.
so now I feel like a big thing now. A lot of people mention to parents, or even to their friends, is having a tribe, meaning like a support system. In some families or some situations, people don't have support systems, or they may not. They probably just don't have a big family, or maybe they do have a big family, but everybody's so busy, and maybe they're a single parent. Um, is there anything or any resources I should say for single parents, or any resources they can rely on, like as far as like schooling, like counselors or anything like that?
Yeah. So I always say that your microsystem and your macrosystem are the most important. So your microsystem is the individual itself, whoever is in the home, and whoever is attached to the home, like mutual friends, mutual family members, close knit members like grandma, things like that. And then your macro system is like your community, right? So the people you interact with in school, the people you interact with at work. So I always say that for single parents, you have to rely on those people in your community. You have to rely on the people around you to kind of help fulfill you or propel you if you don't have that within the home. And some people do come from, loving homes and loving families where they have the support. But some people, however, do not have the same opportunity. But there are people out here who are a resource to you. A teacher, I'll never forget one of my high school teachers, love him to death, was a valuable resource to me in helping me like really be focused on what I was going to do after high school. And so I consider him a valuable resource, but I also consider him family. He's not my blood family, he's not biological, but he was a resource for me at the time. And so people like that are people that we have to kind of rely on in our community to kind of help us when we need it the most. And so we create relationships within our neighborhood. We create relationships within the schools. We create relationships when we interact in the stores. Wherever we are, we're forming or fostering a relationship, and how we have our first impressions, how we interact, all plays a part into what connection we're making and how we're utilizing that person or that connection as a resource. So I always say life is a learning experience. And I say that because every day you're learning, you don't stop learning, especially if you're a curious person, you're always learning. So I always say life is a lesson, whether it's a positive in it or it's a negative. You can always find something in it to, kind of take back and use with you. But for single parents, there are some resources online, and I can share them with you also. And also just relying heavily on the schools. Like I always refer back to the schools because a lot of people don't know about the resources that are within the schools and the outside connections that these schools have to the community and partnerships and even higher educational programs and planning. So always, always, always do not be afraid to ask your school for any support or even the crossing guard. You just never know who's connected to who. And it's just always good to make those, connections and to build those relationships, I say.
I agree. I've learned that as an adult that it's okay to learn from other people,
Mm-hmm.
because one thing black mama say, that's not your mama. You do what I say. I didn't tell you. You don't listen to them. They can't tell you what to do. But it's like you can actually learn from multiple people, and it doesn't have to just be your mom or your dad or someone in your home. Um, yeah, you can learn from multiple people, and I feel like sometimes people limit their resources when they tell their kids that, like, oh, you don't have to listen to them or they can't tell you this, but it's like they actually may know something that your mom or your dad does not know. So you
Yeah,
listening to them is not define your parent, but they know something else that you may need to know that your parent may not.
yeah, accurate. That is true.
For children, is mentoring still a thing? Because I know I have a mentor. I hear people saying mentoring now for adults, but is mentoring for still for children? And do you recommend mentoring for children?
I love mentoring. In the future, that's like one of my end goals. Like I want to create a mentoring program. And I keep saying black people because I really want to focus on the black population and people of color because we don't have a lot of resources that are specifically skilled to meet our cultural needs. So I really want to focus on African American women, African American men, people of color, men and women. But for mentoring me, I still have a mentor till this day. Like I have mentors within my national program that I'm affiliated with. I had a mentor within the district that I was in 2 years ago. I mean, for the past 2 years before moving here. I mean, I just think it's great to have someone that can kind of guide you because, like I said, you're always learning. So when I was younger, I was in Boys and Girls Club. I was a Girl Scout. All of those mentor programs, I think, have helped me. Be the leader that I am today. And even I did a nonprofit organization in which I had to serve under a supervisor and a mentor. So you're building those relationships and you're building those connections and you're learning these different skills and you're becoming multifaceted and you're doing that through someone who has a certain criteria or a level of expertise that you may not have. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to be open to learning, right? So in order for you to kind of be susceptible and well-rounded, you have to open yourself up to be able to learn from someone that is maybe different from you. So I always say, especially for children, it's good to raise them in a good environment, but it's also to take them out of that environment to let them explore and to see something different than what they're used to. I can't even tell you the amount of children who can't tell me that they live on an island out here when I ask them what is an island. So it's just like you live on an island all your life, but you don't know what an island is. So we just have to be really cognizant of like what we're teaching our children and what we're exposing them to so that they're not just stuck in a bubble that their environment has taught them. We want them to be more exposed and making sure that it's positive exposure, not negative things that they're exposing them to, but also just making sure they're learning from different things around them on a day-to-day basis that can help them, like reading road signs, reading maps,
Mm-hmm.
teaching them, how to navigate different tools to work on a car, whatever it is. You just want them to have a lot of skills up under their belt so they're not just going in with this one bubble of,
Mm-hmm.
ideas or knowledge.
Does that hinder their learning process? Like when a child is just kept at home all the time, they don't go anywhere, they just go to school and go home. That does that have an effect on the way that they learn or their social skills?
For sure, yeah, definitely. So if a child is just in the home and you're not exposing them to anything, when they're out trying to socialize, for a child who's constantly around students all the time with peers, they're more talkative. They love to play. They know how to initiate a task. They know how to involve in games that involve two, three, or four players. Whereas a kid who's been in the house, maybe an only child, he doesn't know how to interact with two or three people or more. He doesn't know how to engage in conversation. So, in order for us to do that, you have to engage them in environments where they can learn. So involving them in extracurricular activities, just making sure they're into maybe sports if they enjoy sports, whether it's music, involving them in music class, whatever it is, just giving them a foundation so that they can be socially adjusted and they're not, appearing unless they're maybe possibly like, a social deficit or something that's not like considered, in the norm. Because sometimes there are kids who may be suffering from a disability that's impacting their social skills. So it's just a matter of being aware of what's going on with your child and just making sure we're creating opportunities so that we can kind of intervene if we do notice that our child may not be as socially adjusted as the next child is, or if our child maybe not as, I guess, academically inclined or even developmentally inclined, like fine motor skills, gross motor skills, walking, talking, things like that. You have to make sure you notice those things so that you can get your child the right support that they may need, when they're getting ready to transition to school from a home, if they're always in home. But also, I don't think it's a bad thing, just if you're keeping your child at home, just making sure you expose them to different areas of learning, just making sure they're not spending all the time on watching TV or on their tablets or TV. So just making sure that you're creating multiple opportunities, you're putting them outside in nature, and you're exposing them to more than just one area of, life.
As far as being able to identify if your child is having a problem with socializing, learning, or anything like that, is there a certain age or any certain signs that you should start looking for um, when trying to make sure? Because I know all kids learn at their own pace, and
Hmm.
every child is different. Your child may not do what my child does, but
Hmm.
is there anything significant that you could really look at and say, okay, we may need to go a little further with this, or we may need to look into this?
Yeah, I say language is really key for me because children start saying words I think around one or two, and then they start speaking into phrases and then eventually sentences, and then you notice also children typically start walking I think around 12 months, between 9 and 12 months, and if you notice like any delays in those areas, those are things that you want to kind of be aware of, and so it may not be that the child may have a disability. It could be just that they're a little delayed because of maybe medical factors with the birth. It could be like related to complications with the pregnancy. It can be hereditary. It can be
Mhm.
a multiple array of things, but you just have to make sure you identify exactly what it is that maybe is delaying your child or what it is that your child may be not as well rounded in, and you're making sure you get them that support, whether they have to go to a pediatrician, whether they have to go to see an occupational therapist, whatever it is, you just want to make sure that you're identifying what that area of concern is, and then you're seeking support within your environment or within the school to kind of help them be more inclined.
Perfect. So going back to your high schoolers, when those children are getting ready to leave high school and they're about to transition into the adult world, but they are just lost in the sauce. They don't know what they want to do, who they want to be, if they want to go to college, do they want to go to work? How do we help them decide that as parents? Or can we help them decide that?
I always say it goes back to the environment that you created. Like, if the child does not want to go to school, are they comfortable enough? Do they trust you enough to come confide in you and say, hey, I don't think college is for me, right? I think I want to get a trade. That's okay. You give them the proper tools, give them educational planning, you kind of help guide them. You don't force anything on them, because that just leads to negative behavior, like acting out, even
Mhm.
not want to go to school at all, and just maybe living, just dropping out, or maybe something extreme like becoming the complete opposite of what you were raised to be,
Mhm.
like being on the street, turn into drugs, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So you just want to make sure you're identifying with what that child area of strength is. Like I talked about their learning styles. Like if they're musically inclined, they could be a songwriter, or they can be
Mhm.
a musician. Or if they're a person who likes to understand and relate to people, they could be a politician, or a counselor. Whatever it is, you just want to make sure you're identifying what it is that child may be more interested in, like maybe an artist, and it could be like painting. Maybe you want to look into art school, or maybe taking up a license where they can be an art teacher, or do something where they're mentoring. Whatever it is, you always just want to make sure you're identifying what that student is more comfortable doing. And you don't want to force anything onto a child, because that just always, always, always has a negative side effect to it. So you just always want to make sure you're giving them the space to be open to identifying with you what it is that they want to do, as far as life after high school, maybe, or if they drop out of high school, GED is always an option. We always want to find the positive in life, and even in education, because as I say, college is not for everybody, and
Mhm.
everybody do not learn the same way, because there are eight intelligence theories, so everybody has at least one of them, I know for sure. So
Mhm.
just identifying what your level of skill is, and just honing in on that, and just going for it.
Does the school play a part in helping seniors transition into college or deciding what they want to do after school?
Yeah, I think at my high school they had co-ed, and so that's like
Mhm.
a co-educational where you can take college courses
Mhm.
for if you're transitioning to a 2-year college, or maybe a 4-year college. It
Mhm.
gives you like a leg up into being accepted into a university or a 2-year
Mhm.
program. And I know that if you are very involved in like extracurricular activities, most times you can be recruited on scholarships by
Mhm.
different agencies, whether it's like football, basketball, cheering, um, track, tennis, lacrosse, whatever it is. I always say, like, try to involve yourself in a sport, because that's always an easy opportunity to get a full scholarship. But also, you have to do what you love, right? So
Mhm.
don't go play a sport that you don't like. Don't go join a group just to be a part of a clique, just so that you can get the credentials, whatever it is. You have to do what is most fitting for you and most suited for you. And you have to be comfortable in that and have that self efficacy to know that you have what it takes to be confident in yourself, to step out and to go, kind of down your own path, whatever that may look like for you. So typically, counselors help you kind of navigate life after college. Um, and sometimes your parents do. They already kind of have it identified. Some parents want you to follow in their footsteps. And if you don't follow in their footsteps, sometimes it could lead to
Mhm.
negative, behavior. So you don't want to pressure children. You kind of always want them to be comfortable. And you start by creating that relationship early on when they're young, when they're kids, and establishing that trust and that independency, and fostering that positive and nurturing environment, so that they can navigate life and make decisions, and make the best decisions really when they're older and able to do so.
I love it. I'm so excited because my son is like 2. I'm gonna be so ahead of the game.
Yeah,
Like I am ready. Like I'm gonna have
yeah,
all the information. And that's a
love.
part of why I wanted to do this because I'm like, I know we have kids. We got to get ready. Like this is what's going on. We
Mhm.
need to know.
Yes. Well, you got all the tools, and it's always plenty of resources out there. Even if you don't know, I say pick up your phone, type it in on Google search, scroll
Hmm.
through it if you have to, and then word of mouth. Just ask, ask, ask. I always say do your own research first, because you can find out more. But if you don't, just ask somebody that you trust, that you can talk to.
Definitely. So outside of the career transition of a child, how does a parent deal with the teen that transitioning into adulthood period? Because me, when I was working at a doctor's office, some kids would come in and they'll be like 20, 19, 20, and the moms would just be hovering over them. And me, I grew up kind of different. My mom taught me how to take care of everything like that when I was like 17. But some moms are just like, I have to be here. I need to go back there with you to the doctor. I'm just like, oh, ma'am, no, he's an adult. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And so I guess for some parents, I feel like it's hard for them to let go and to help their child transition without hanging on and clinging on to them. So, how do they deal with that?
So sometimes I feel as though that kind of goes back to the parent. Like if the child is not displaying that same type of behavior, then there's something with the parent that they're attaching to the child for. Sometimes parents rely on their children to kind of help them cope and navigate through life. We
Mm-hmm.
think that we need our children, but more times our children, we think that our children need us, but more time we need our children. And
Mm-hmm.
so typically I say that it could likely be something residing with the parent, or it could be something established that's trauma based, right? So the parent may have witnessed something traumatic with the child, or she could just be overprotective. Some moms are just like that, they're very, very nurturing. They want to do everything with you. They create this environment and they're so afraid for you to move on,
Mm-hmm.
and some children need that type of affection, but you also have some children who don't like or respond to as much calling from their parents, so
Mm-hmm.
they're looking to venture out on their own, and they feel safe and they feel okay to explore and navigate their environment, and that all goes to the work that the parent did, so kudos to the parent. But sometimes if a parent is over secure, maybe she's feeling like she doesn't want to be abandoned. There are some
Mm-hmm.
abandonment issues that need to be addressed. So you
Mm-hmm.
always want to kind of just take a step back to kind of reflect and see if it's an issue with the parent, or
Mm-hmm.
if it's an issue with the child, or if it's something that's being passed on from the parent to the child, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good perspective. I never thought about it that way. I always get so frustrated. I'm just like, "Ah, this child is an adult. You need to leave them alone." But it actually could be deeper than what it just looks like. That's usually how things are.
Yeah.
So now I want to ask some questions about you. Being that you deal with so much mental health and you are a psychologist, how do you keep yourself together? Because I know you probably see a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of emotions, a lot of stories. So what do you do to just keep yourself from just spazzing out?
I do a lot of cliche self-care. Like I'm very big like on self-care, and I wasn't as big on self-care when I was navigating through undergrad and like trying to figure out life in adulthood. I didn't really care about self-care. But after going through grad school and just being so overwhelmed with like curriculum and courses and just working full time, I had to really learn how to adapt to this new life. And so I knew that I wanted to continue matriculating through education. I just had to find a balance. And so what I did was I started reading more to kind of keep my brain functioning,
Mm-hmm.
and I started just engaging in more self-care. Like I thoroughly enjoy going to the spa to get facials. I thoroughly enjoy going to get my self-care, my waxes and my massages and things like that. All those things are like pleasurable for me. I'm very big on, as crazy as this sounds, I like to go smell candles. So like and pick out candles. So like that's like calming for me, like smelling the aroma and the scent and like
Mm-hmm.
just being able to do something that I love, and like not just shopping but like engaging in like therapeutic shopping. Like so whether it's decor for my home, whether it's like shopping for a new wardrobe for work, whether I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
some supplies for my office, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is that just makes me happy and like takes my mind away from my job or like
Mm-hmm.
the overall negative outlook of life. I always try to be happy and highly in tune with the positivity, and if I
Mm-hmm.
see myself or feel myself being negative or sad, I acknowledge my feelings. I'm human, but I don't allow those feelings to like take over my identity, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to unwind, get me a glass of wine or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is to engage in self-care. I do that, and it really helps. And so it's really whatever works for you, but you have to find your niche, you know.
Definitely. I love it. I love candles and stationery. Like I feel like I have a million notebooks. Like I love buying notebooks and pens. Like I don't even
Yes.
know why, but they just make me so happy. Like calendars and planners. Yeah, I
Yes.
totally get that. I love the stationery section.
So you're very organized, right? You're a planner. You like to be organized.
Yes, yes, I do. I like to write too. I like to see it and I have to get it out and I have to either put it in my
Yeah,
notes or I have to write it down. So yeah, I definitely have to see it, get it out.
that's wonderful.
So far in your career, what has been one of your favorite moments or your highlight moment?
I think my happiest moments or a highlight moment of mine was like being able to pour back into like communities or not community students to come in my program that I matriculated through. So my grad program. For the past 2 years, I've went back and given like a segment on like my life through grad school, like how I matriculated through the program and like my current work experience and what I'm doing now. And there's always one student out the bunch that reminds me of myself and how less confident I was when I was coming through the program because I didn't know I wanted to be a school psychologist. It was new for me. It was a white dominated field. Not many
Mm-hmm.
black people are psychologists. So it's like I'm learning, but I'm also trying to navigate these waters to be
Mm-hmm.
confident and to have this whole identity. And so I think a highlight for me is just knowing that I can pour into students and let them know that you can start small, and then grow to become something even bigger. I'm still growing, but I think the most important thing is just being able to know that everyone starts at a pace, and how you start the race is not how you will finish the race. So as long as you're willing to go through it and learn and to be able to grow, you have to have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. And so to
Mm-hmm.
do that, you have to be able to explore and to be able to give back to those around you. And so my biggest highlight is just being able to go back to my university and give segments to the younger cohorts and the people who are matriculating through the program, and they always have so many questions, and it's really fulfilling to actually
Mm-hmm.
have them take away so much, and knowing that I'm just this regular old person who doesn't feel like they know anything, but
Yeah.
they are making me feel like I know everything, and it's just a wonderful experience.
I love it. That is beautiful. I think that wraps up all of our questions. Before we get out of here, is there anything you would like to leave out with, or anything we can expect for you? Because I just feel like, I don't know. I can see you writing a book or something. I don't know. I just see it. I can feel it. So, is there anything like we can expect from you in the future on your own adventures?
Yeah, so Lord's will, I'll be in a PhD program within the next year. I've been trying to find the proper program for me. Navigating those waters is a little bit tricky,
Mm-hmm.
being that I do want to currently stay in the location that I'm in. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to implement a program out here that connects like educators from the states, and it creates an opportunity for them to come out and serve a year of a assistantship, or just dedicate a year to fellowship or teaching, and to give them the experience. But also overall, just I mentioned earlier that I would like to create a mentorship program. So that's something that I want to come back home to my hometown to do eventually in the next 5 years or so, and to create like a facility where children can come and just, be academically inclined. They can get support, whether it's behavior, social, emotional, and just be a mentor for the community.
We love it. The community needs you. I'm rooting for you. I'm excited to see what happens. I thank you so much. Because this was great. It was absolutely amazing. I feel like people are going to walk away with a lot of new knowledge that they didn't know they needed. So I thank you so much for being open to coming to this platform and sharing your information with us. I'm really so proud of you. I think your career is so
Oh,
cool. I'm so glad that
thank
those kids have you out there. Like, you are really like doing God's work. Like, He sent you there for a reason. And I'm just so proud of you, and I'm so happy for you. And I hope that
you.
everything works out, and that we're going to come visit you in St. Thomas.
Yes, come on. I need visitors. The more the merrier. It's wonderful. You'll love it. And I really appreciate you for having me. I wish you all the best in your business and your ventures. And I know you're going to do wonderful things, and you're going to continue to pour and reach communities that are not being able to be impacted, because this is a wonderful platform and you're doing an awesome job. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, guys, we went a little over 21 minutes, but this is the first episode of 21 Minutes with DJ Fergg, psychologist Martha Brown. Thank you so much. I will link her information below if you guys want to follow her, keep up with her. We can definitely have that going on. We might have to bring her back in a year for a follow up to see what's going on in St. Thomas. So just thank you again. Any closing statements?
Yes, I always say, at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off, try again.
Yes, I love it. It's the truth. It's a real thing.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We'll see you guys later.